Stand by for action.
Thanks for joining me. My name's Dave Milner. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy. And this time I'm talking about fake news. And I'm talking with Jan Rennie. Jan Rennie is a panelist with me on the English Defense League radio program and someone who knows quite a bit about what's going on in the world. She's seen plenty of stories and knows what's real and knows what's fake and knows resources and places to go and find the real thing. Now, what I'm going to do is read some stories, and for all of you listeners out there, I'll also be posting these stories in UBG Contact on Twitter. That's where you can contact me with comments, questions, show suggestions, awesome American suggestions. It is the main contact point for the show. And I'm going to begin by analyzing a story that was posted on December the 5th, 2016 by Matthew Barakat and Jessica Gresco of the Associated Press. Now remember, listeners, the Associated Press is considered to be the gold standard of quote-unquote real news. But we start with the headline. Police, fake news story led to pizzeria shooting. I want to start with that headline right there. Jan, let me ask you, whenever you see a headline like that, what do you assume immediately?
This actual one, that someone has been shot, I believe someone could have been shot, has led to, if you like, a murder. If fake news has led to a shooting, and that person is a victim and expires, then it's as good as murder, you know.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about, people. That headline leads you to believe that someone was shot because it's called a shooting. But that's not what happened. Let me read into the story, and I'll stop at appropriate points here. Washington. The bizarre rumors began with a leaked email referencing Hillary Clinton and sinister interpretations of references to pizza parties. It morphed into fake online news stories about a child sex trafficking ring run by prominent Democrats operating out of a Washington, D.C. pizza joint. Now, Jan, let me ask you, you're in the UK. How many stories have you seen from over there now about child sex rings being run out of places like what we would call over here in the United States group homes and other established businesses? How bizarre can something like that really be?
Unfortunately, in the UK, we have had many sex trafficking cases concerning, in the main, Islamists. We have had revealed in the past 12 months the likes of Jimmy Savile and co. from the BBC that actually ran a programme for donkey's years called Jim'll Fix It. And at the very beginning of this programme, when it started, I think it was back in the late 70s, it looked to be a good programme because it was fixing things for people. But after so many weeks, it turned into children sitting on his lap. And so you didn't tune into it because you get kind of tired of little children sitting on his lap and they want to fix, and it becomes like a toy thing or a little expedition for children. Mm-hmm. So decades later, a good decade after he died, if you like, it comes to light that he was what we call in the UK a nonce. He was a paedophile. Right. And had many connections within the BBC. I mean, that's who employed him all these years with the BBC. And we've been watching this child sexual scandal unfold. You know, there's been a little cover-ups here and there, but the biggest cover-ups, of course, as you know, Dave, are the child sex rings concerning the Islamists, right, and children's homes.
Well, and that's where I was going to ask you here.
And it's been going on for decades.
So how unusual, see, these people are setting this up, listeners, to be an unusual thing for a child sex ring to be run out of a legitimate place of business. And, Jan, that's what I want to get from you. How unusual is that, really?
It's not unusual here. We have heard about sex rings being run from takeaway businesses, Middle East takeaway businesses, taxi ranks, especially taxi ranks now, because that's predominantly Islamists that now have black taxis, private cars In fact,
Right.
I posted one yesterday where two men in a deserted area with no buildings around followed a taxi, and it turned out to be a Muslim. And the girl in the back of the car who was terrified, he was molesting, and she was about 10 or 11 years of age. Now, there was no link. The guy who verbally had a go at him, well, there was two guys and they filmed it with their cell phone. He was in complete denial and said she just needed to be cuddled. And, you know, they were saying, why have you brought her out here? But this is what they're doing, you see.
Yeah.
And it says at the bottom that the police had been involved, but we don't hear any more about it. It's like a huge cover-up.
Jan, that's perfect, because in another story concerning this, listeners, what was said was that the police were informed about this and had not been investigating it. Now, my rhetorical question is, if there is a hint of a child sex ring being run out of somewhere, does it really matter where the source of that allegation comes from? Shouldn't the police at least check it out when you have many children going missing in the Washington, D.C. area every year? Should it not be investigated at least on a cursory level? But the police were not investigating this. Now, I'm going to read on. On Sunday, it culminated in violence when police say a North Carolina man fired an assault rifle. Now, remember that, guys. Fired an assault rifle multiple times inside the Comet Ping Pong restaurant as he attempted to self-investigate the conspiracy theory known in the Twitterverse as Pizzagate. No one was hurt, and the man was arrested. Remember the headline, people? Shooting? It implied that someone was shot. No one was hurt, and the man was arrested. But the shooting alarmed those from neighboring businesses all the way to the White House about the real-life dangers of fake news on the Internet. One of those posting on the conspiracy theory is the son, get ready for this, people, is the son of President-elect Donald Trump's proposed national security advisor. Now, I have to say, people, that is a really long reach to try and connect Donald Trump to this because of posts made by someone else's son. But again, this is the Associated Press. This is supposed to be over here in the United States the gold standard of real news. All right, I'm going to continue. White House spokesman Josh Earnest, asked about the shooting Monday, said, "There's no denying the corrosive effect that some of these false reports have had on our political debate. It's deeply troubling that some of those false reports could lead to violence." Now, Jan, as you just heard, there was no violence. Yes, shots were fired, but no one was hurt. And I'd like to say also here that every citizen has the right to self-investigate a news story. You don't have to be licensed to do that. In fact, it would probably be better if people did self-investigate these stories, because we have to keep our own news agencies in check, all of them. One of the stories that I read about this said that two people came into the restaurant with a cell phone camera and were taking pictures and were asked to leave, and they left. Now, that's what you do if you are a polite citizen journalist, which, in my opinion, casts a little bit of doubt on this whole story of an armed man coming into the pizza joint to self-investigate a story. That's not how you do it. That's not how anyone I know does it. None of them would consider going in to investigate a place armed. Or
not unless they wanted to be shot by the cops.
Well, exactly. And if they were armed, it would be something on the order of a licensed concealed carry weapon, which they would always keep out of sight while they were doing their investigation. And then they would leave. If they were asked to leave, they would do so politely. That's how it's done. This, Jan, is why I'm very doubtful of this whole story meme. All right, let me move on here. Now, Jan, tell me if you think this sounds like, the normal owner of a restaurant, even an establishment in an upscale area. Comet's owner, James Alatantis, said in a statement Sunday night, "Let me state unequivocally, these stories are completely and entirely false, and there is no basis in fact for any of them. What happened today demonstrates that promoting false and reckless conspiracy theories comes with consequences. Does that sound like a normal statement that would be written by a restaurant owner that's busy trying to feed people?
When you read between the lines, first of all, the actual post, you have to start thinking that there's no smoke without fire when there's allegations made. But then they turn it right at the beginning. They try to discredit Trump. Now, whether it's a friend, son of a friend, or an acquaintance of Trump, why, they don't even need to mention Trump's name. So there they are trying to discredit the president-elect already. I dare say in the future we're going to have a hell of a lot more of this, Dave.
Very likely, yeah.
And if there's no investigation in the first place, if it was true, with no smoke without fire kind of link, if it was true and no cop investigated, then surely a member of the public, especially if one of their children are involved or could be involved, or they care genuinely about the regular population, then they're going to go in there, but certainly not with a gun drawn.
Well, exactly.
And get himself killed, because had he fired the gun in the first place, or even frightened anyone by firing into the ceiling, I'm damn sure a load of cops would have come at the back of him and probably shot him dead because he was armed. It's just like, I don't know, it's like an Alice in Wonderland story. I hate conspiracy theories. I must point that out. I detest conspiracy theories. But first of all, it's to discredit Trump. And if there is allegations into any of this, then it should be investigated by the proper channels.
I would think so. It has to do, Jan, with children with child sex ring. And as Kenneth McClinton, the exceptional conservative, points out, children go missing in our nation's capital here every year. And it's a big problem. And those who are interested in this should visit Kenneth McClinton's Facebook page. He has some definite resources and things that he has posted there that you should look at. Now, to continue with the story, still at least one person clinging to the conspiracy theories is prominently connected to Trump's transition team. See, here they go again, Jan. Yep. Michael Flynn Jr. is an advisor to his father, as every son would be, by the way. His father, Michael Flynn, whom Trump selected to serve as National Security Advisor. Well, of course, he's an advisor. If a father and son get along, they give each other advice. That doesn't make him a big, huge insider to the Donald Trump transition team or anything like that. But once again, what are they doing here? They're trying to connect this supposed incident to Donald Trump. Now, I read in another story, Jan, that there is a theory out there that this man who was arrested could have been an actor hired by government officials just to make this point about quote-unquote fake news, because the new mainstream media were so, and when I say the new mainstream media, I mean things that aren't the alphabet soup of cable channels over here, no CNN, NBC, or any of the others, were so instrumental in getting Donald Trump elected. People turned off the older media areas and came to the new mainstream media and began paying attention to them. And I think that is the motivation behind this whole thing.
I mean, they've even hashtagged Pizzagate. They've got a hashtag next to it. I mean... Oh,
yes, they do. Yes.
It's absolutely crazy. It goes on to say that Welsh was charged on multiple counts, including assault with a dangerous weapon. Police recovered an AR-15 rifle, a Colt 38 handgun, a shotgun, and a folding knife. It's armed to the teeth.
Yeah, but
it's ridiculous.
But that brings me to my next point, Jan. Now, these people from the Associated Press are writing an article here about fake news. What did they say? They said he was armed with an assault rifle. Now, the AR-15 is not an assault rifle, not unless it has been modified. If it has not been modified, it is not an assault rifle. It is just a rifle. And yet, they said that it was an assault rifle.
Yes.
Which is a complete lie. AR does not stand for assault rifle. It stands for Armalite, which is a different thing altogether. It's just a lightweight rifle. That's all. It's not an assault rifle. But I think these people knew that, and they put this out anyway. So, in a story about fake news, they're putting out fake news. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, court records released Monday showed that Welch surrendered peacefully when he found no evidence that underage children were being harbored in the restaurant. Well, I'm sure he did surrender peacefully, probably because, a dozen cops were drawing down on him. But it does almost give credence to the rumor out there that this might have been a hired actor. And I want everyone to think about this. And Jan, you've seen this enough in the UK yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Government conspiring against the people.
It's continuing. At least with Mr. Trump come January, as you know, we watched every time he was on his...
on the stump, I think is what you mean. On the campaign stump.
On the campaign, we fervently in the UK watched it, thanks to the internet. And we know what Mr. Trump thinks about the press. He openly called them liars. So they have a vendetta, as well as the Liberals have a vendetta, you know, and they're all going to jump on this bandwagon. But I'm sure Mr. Trump will handle this. This is name-dropping all the way through this fake post, this fake news about fake incidents, if it was. They keep saying, like, this man's connected to Donald Trump. It's ludicrous.
Oh, yes, I think it is. And this is what I want the listeners to get. These two reporters work for the Associated Press over here. Now, guys, in case you don't know, the Associated Press, along with UPI and Reuters, used to be the wire services, they still are, they used to be the old-time wire services that other news agencies would draw their stories from. Now, folks, do you remember seeing shows like Lou Grant or maybe Kolchak the Night Stalker or movies about newspapers, even watching old TV news programs where you would hear that ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk going in the background? Those were the teletype machines from the wire services. That's where they got their news from. And one of those wire services was the Associated Press. So this is supposed to be the very core of news that you're hearing from in this article. And yet, what are they doing? They're writing an article with lies in it and innuendo, basically, just as Jan said, fake news about fake news. Now, Hillary Clinton wasted no time jumping on the fake news meme, as in this post, published on December the 8th, 2016, by ABC News on YouTube, titled, Hillary Clinton on Fake News Dangers.
One threat in particular that should concern all Americans, Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike, especially those who serve in our Congress. The epidemic of malicious fake news and false propaganda that flooded social media over the past year. It's now clear that so-called fake news can have real-world consequences. This isn't about politics or partisanship. Lives are at risk. Lives of ordinary people just trying to go about their days, to do their jobs, contribute to their communities. It's a danger that must be addressed, and addressed quickly. Bipartisan legislation is making its way through Congress to boost the government's response to foreign propaganda, and Silicon Valley is starting to grapple with the challenge and threat of fake news. It's imperative that leaders in both the private sector and the public sector step up to protect our democracy and innocent lives.
Wow. This is if you like, jumping on the bandwagon. She was provocateur in fake news about Donald Trump. Every time she opened her mouth, the 3 occasions she spent more time slating Donald Trump than she did anything else.
And you're talking about, of course, the Donald Trump supposed sex scandals.
Yes, yep.
Now, everybody...
This is complete hypocrisy coming from her about what it can do to people's lives.
Oh, yes.
We practiced it.
Absolutely. Now, that should frighten everyone who has heard it down to their core, because Hillary Clinton wants to use fake news, just as she has used hate speech and provocative speech, as excuses to constrain free speech. And I just want to make something clear. In the United States of America, all speech is protected. We have freedom of speech. I don't care what some Supreme Court said about yelling fire in a crowded theater. All speech is protected. Let me say that again. In the original intent of the Founding Fathers of the Constitution of the United States, all speech is protected.
Let's have some fun with another one of those facts that everybody knows, but that just isn't true. When progressives are trying to justify limiting one of your constitutionally protected rights, you'll often hear them say something like, hey, your rights aren't absolute, man. I mean, we limit them all the time. After all, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, right? But can you? Of course you can. If I'm in a theater and there's a fire, I'm going to point that out. And I highly doubt that anybody's going to prosecute me for saying so. The truth is always a good defense. Now, if you yell out fire and there isn't one, the government can certainly punish you for that. But as Dr. Kevin Gutzman explains in his book, Who Killed the Constitution? In that case, you're not being punished for the content of your speech. You're being punished because the chaos that results from you yelling fire in that theater could lead to people getting injured. So you violated the rights of other people in that theater. It has nothing to do with restricting speech. It's about you endangering the physical safety of other people. Finally, most theaters are private property, so the First Amendment doesn't apply anyway. If you buy a ticket to go into a theater, the owner of that theater can restrict you from yelling meatballs or anything else they want to. Unfortunately, this myth has been very effective in convincing people that it's okay to restrict your rights. The problem with yelling fire in a crowded theater isn't about your right to free speech. It's about you violating the rights of other people. We need to make sure that we understand that distinction very well so that we don't continue to allow the government to chip away at our rights. That's the Constitution Revolution, and I am Chad Kent for the Chris Salcedo Show.
And Jan, you in the UK now have hate speech laws. Can you speak just briefly about the implications? Let's just say that you or someone you know over there in the UK were to, let's say, make some true statements about Muslims. Could you be arrested? Could you be actually thrown in jail for your own speech?
Yes. Yes, it's happening. We have people in prison for attending demonstrations and shouting out that this is going to be stopped, etc., etc. If we're anti-Islam, we are deemed as racist, even though race doesn't come into it. Anyone can be an Islamist. Oh, and by the way, Dave, last week we had a police officer throw elderly, so he would have been due a good pension. I'm not sure whether he's going to get his pension or not. They found out that this police officer was within a group that was anti-Islam. So he was fired. And we've heard more about him.
Well, there you go. Yeah, that's terrible.
No,
that's terrible.
There is no doubt in my mind that the laws of this land regarding hate speech comes directly from Downing Street. As it will do with you lot, comes direct from the White House. They're not going to admit it, but that's what happens.
Well, and that breaks into the reason. Now, the English Defense League, a lot of times when you see people in the English Defense League demonstrating, some of them have masks on. And they have masks on not because they're trying to scare people or anything like that. It's because they're scared. They're scared because they could lose their jobs. That's happened. They're scared because they could lose their children. That's happened. Yep. They're scared because they could possibly have violent attacks on themselves. That's happened. Yes, all of those things have happened. And the free speech and fake news memes do work into this because their speech is now constricted to the point where they feel that it's their jobs if they're seen on camera with their whole face out there demonstrating. And you really can't blame them, in my opinion, for wanting to protect themselves. But who you can blame are the governments that are destroying our freedom of speech because of such phony memes as fake news and hate speech.
But just briefly going back to newspapers, I haven't bought a newspaper in 20 years because it's full of BS. If the people are not on social media and don't search for themselves the truth, and by the truth, I don't mean our regular newspapers, and you've mentioned that your Associated Press there, Dave. Mm-hmm. I do not believe a thing I read in the newspapers because they are protecting everything that's wrong, everything that's liberal, everything that goes against the grain. They are protecting, and they are openly telling lies. If you're not on the internet and seek the truth yourself, the general public out there, the general public that's around me, I live in a small place, and yes, people are on the internet, but they're just socializing and telling jokes. They don't want to know what's going on. It's too much for them to bear. They've told me this. I can't deal with that. I've got my life to lead. I don't want to think about the future. That's their attitude. They don't want to be called racist, but they don't know what's going on.
Right.
Very little is on our television sets. It's all dubbed, covered up. Even the beheading or the attempted beheading of people here, they don't say an attempt on beheading. They say stabbed.
Right.
And then you find out a couple of months later that the injuries was to the neck, which to me is an attempt to behead, is what they do anyway.
Well, they're calling that beheadings, stabbings, routinely. In Sweden, for instance. And listeners, part of the reason why I have Jan Rennie here with me is because she has connections with Eastern European people who are marching in their tens of thousands against Islamization. Now, the thing is, you don't hear this on some of the news agencies over here in the United States. And it's not because they don't know that this is going on. It's because they're not talking about it on purpose. They want to shape and mold the way you think.
For instance, 75,000 Polish marched in the streets of Poland. Warsaw, other cities, 75,000 people. Imagine that crowd. And that was in September. I have connections with a couple of Polish people, and he gives me the links, and I put on our pages here. There are vast amounts of demonstrations across Europe and here. It's not just the EDL here. There's many organisations, and they do their own demonstrations. Yes, but it's the liberals, the lefties, who get the most arrests because they are so violent towards us. There is no violence with these people. Even in Poland and France and Germany, you've got Pegida. Hundreds of thousands of people marching every Monday. But you didn't know that one. Every Monday, Pegida are on the march in Germany. The leader has just been found €9,500 for speaking his mind with the threat of prison. You've got Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, just been fined $9,500. These people are not racist. These people do not want Sharia and Islamists in their countries because of the dangers they are taking over. They are outbreeding us. They want the West. That is their sole purpose, their sole agenda, is to infiltrate and conquer. It's like the newspapers. They find pictures of women and children and how they're dying and how starving they are. We're not getting women and children over here. We're getting men of fighting age.
Right.
And call them children.
Yeah, and calling them children. If you want to find fake news, listeners, just look at the quote-unquote legitimate newspapers who are calling these people children who come over. They're not children. They're young men of fighting age, and they're fit. So there's nothing wrong with them. But I wanted you to speak about the constriction of free speech, Jan, in your country, because, as you just heard, Hillary Clinton wants to constrict free speech in our country, and she's not alone. She is joined by progressive Republicans, basically people who are not conservatives. They want to keep people from telling their fellow citizens the truth. So they call it fake news, or they say that it's speech that incites violence, or they say that it is hate speech. And they use that excuse, as they have in the UK and as they're doing in Europe, to shut down websites and people who do podcasts and things of that nature. This is a vast disservice to the people. And Hillary Clinton is not alone. In a follow-up to a story about a church, which, by the way, Jan originally posted, in Sweden, where they had to hire security to keep Muslims from coming into the church and defecating in the pews and urinating in the pews.
And even masturbating in the pews.
And even trying to kidnap children during baptisms. I got a very interesting response because the story came from Breitbart UK. Now, this was a Facebook conversation, and it took place on December the 11th. And an individual named Adrienne Wasner said, Breitbart.com equals fake news. Let's be careful. Now,
everything it says is the truth.
Well, I look at Breitbart this way, and I always like to caution listeners to be careful of any news source, whichever one it is. And if you're interested, try and research these things yourselves if you can. No news source is 100% accurate 100% of the time. But even though Breitbart might be Trump-centric, in other words, overly supportive of Donald Trump, that does not make them fake news. Now, the next thing that Ms. Wasner said to me in this Facebook thread was something that I found fascinating. And I want to comment on it, and then, Jan, I want to let you loose on it. She said, after I replied to her, when BBC or NPR reports on this, I will give it credibility. Now, people, yeah, I can already tell Jan is... All right, here's the thing, guys. The BBC is quite literally state-sponsored media. They get their operating funds through taxes from the government. They're not a privately run corporation or anything of that nature. They are literally state-run media. As for NPR, they are partially government-supported and almost always toe the government line.
They are actually public-supported because if you have a television in your home in the UK, you pay 175, it could be more than that now, let's say £180 a year for the privilege of having a television, because even though the BBC can be gotten all over the world, if you live in the UK and own a television set, you have to pay the BBC yearly.
And that's about, on the current rate of exchange, guys, that's about $200 a year just for the privilege of getting the state-run media. So for someone to put all of their faith in what amounts to a couple of state-run media outlets is frightening. Now, I'm sure that Ms. Wasner considers herself to be of above-average intelligence and just more with it than the rest of us.
Yes, absolutely.
And, Jan, I'd like for you to comment on the fact that she considers these two sources to be some of the only ones that she'll listen to if she'll give anything credibility.
Well, here's credibility from the BBC. This very week, they have 10 Muslims housed up in a programme which is fashioned on a Channel 4 programme called Big Brother, where they're housed with the cameras on them 24/7. The programme is called Muslims Like Us. Let me assure you, people, there are known terrorist-linked people in there. I've not watched it because I value my television. It would go through my doors if I watched it. I would just get so mad. But this freedom of speech thing, and I'll get back to what you want to talk about, Dave, this freedom of speech thing, they haven't said we haven't got freedom of speech. They bring it up as political correctness. We can't say this, we can't say that. Anything that's politically incorrect in their eyes, which, you know, political correctness is free speech. They're even getting to the point now where they want to control our minds and how we think. If we carry on like this in a few years, even how we think will get us arrested. And you know what, guys? We don't go to the BBC or the Daily Mail or the Express or any of these people to get the real news, to get the real facts. We spy on the Muslim pages. We spy on the Islamist news because they're so stupid. They tell the truth. They don't cover up. They're proud of what they're doing. And this is where we get the videos. This is where we get the news. 7 years ago, an American blogger says to me, "What the hell are you going into Iran newspapers for?" I says, "Because I'm watching what's going on in Syria." And this was before Syria war broke out. And I was putting it in my pages. There's going to be a war in Syria. They want to get rid of Assad and do the same to Assad as what they did to Libya and Gaddafi. And everybody thought I was nuts. But me and this other girl followed it through, and we were going into Iran newspapers. We were getting them translated, and we could see what was going to happen. Of course, when it all broke out, nobody apologised and says, "Oh, you were right." Well, but this is where we get the truth from, is from them themselves, because they brag about what they're doing.
See, and this, listeners, is what's known as being a smart news consumer. I'm a big proponent of doing what Jan does, which is, if you're curious about what's going on in a country, go to their newspapers, because you will come closer to finding the truth the more you peel the onion back. Because what you get here in the States, especially if, for instance, you listen to NPR, for God's sake, or watch PBS or CNN or MSNBC, you get the whole onion. The real story is usually many, many layers below what you actually get. And that is what Jan is talking about. Jan is talking about peeling that onion back and finding the stories even before they occur. And that's what, as smart news consumers, we have to do. If you want to avoid fake news, this is the best way to do it. you can find out very quickly what is real and what is fake by doing that. I'm sure that Ms. Wasner is a very nice person, but she has been programmed, sadly, by our establishment media to have certain responses to anything that makes her uncomfortable. She's been made comfortable in a certain political meme, and she doesn't want to hear the truth. But let's talk about sources for a moment. One of the sources that a lot of people call real news over here is the cable news network, CNN. And I'm going to read a story posted October the 4th, 2016, by Frank Kemp in the Daily Wire. Now, that story is titled, Police Group Accuses CNN of Dangerously Deceptive Edit in Charlotte Shooting Video. Blue Lives Matter, a law enforcement organization, is accusing CNN of deceptively editing the cell phone video taken by Keith Lamont Scott's widow, Rakaya Scott, the day her husband was shot by police in Charlotte, North Carolina. Here's CNN's edited version of the Scott video.
Friday, the victim's family's lawyers released this dramatic cell phone video taken by his wife, Rakaya Scott, showing her pleas to her husband and to the officers. Be forewarned, it is graphic.
Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him. He has no weapon. He has no weapon. Kate, don't you do it. Did you shoot him? Did you shoot him? Did you shoot him? He better not be dead. He better not be dead.
I've seen that many times when the incident occurred, and I thought then something weird about the whole situation, in as much as the wife and the husband, especially the wife, shouting too much. It was like she was overplaying the situation.
Oh, she was just going off.
It left me with the thought of that it was a setup that went wrong.
Well,
a setup for her and her husband that backfired. That's what I felt.
Well, yeah. And here's the unedited version that I'm going to edit some of the language out of myself, because you don't need the language. Listen to this carefully, people, because you can clearly hear police officers in the background telling the individual to drop the gun several times. You did not hear that in CNN's edited version that they broadcast.
Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him. He has no weapon. He has no weapon. Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him. He didn't do anything. He doesn't have a gun. He has a TBI. He's not going to do anything to you guys. He just took his medicine.
Drop the gun. Let me get fucking on over here.
Keith, don't let them break the windows. Come on out the car.
Drop the gun.
Keith, don't do it.
Drop the gun.
Keith, get out the car. Keith, don't you do it. Don't you do it. Keith, don't you do it. Did you shoot him? Did you shoot him?
In the unedited version, police officers can be heard telling Scott to drop the gun. A minimum of 11 times in the edited version, every single call by the officers to drop the gun is omitted. Blue Lives Matter released a statement that reads in part, "The editing was clearly intended to give viewers the impression that Scott wasn't armed by intentionally excluding information to promote the false narrative that the officer-involved shooting of Keith Scott was unjustified. CNN directly contributed towards inciting violence and destruction in the Charlotte riots. Innocent citizens were hurt during the Charlotte riots, but editing like this also incites violence against police officers long after the riots are over." And I'll just stop here to say that we have police officers now being simply assassinated on the streets. One of the cases I refer to is one that happened in late 2016, a man who was frustrated because he was denied the ability to see his son in San Antonio, simply went up and killed a San Antonio police officer while he was sitting in his car. And the reason was because he was frustrated because he wasn't allowed to see his son. So he felt that a police officer was a legitimate target. So, Jan, what are your views on this blatant edit? Does this look like the sort of thing that the press does in the UK?
Yes, it would. And that's when you call to question who allows it to happen. Because the police officers involved, and certainly the police officer who shouted 11 times, minimum 11 times, to drop his weapon, they would have protested right at the beginning that they did this. And when they would have seen the playback of CNN's video, they would have known straight away that it was edited to make it look completely different. So where does the buck stop? My opinion, someone's head should roll for this, whether it's the top, middle, or the bottom, whoever did it. So then you have a police chief. Let's suppose the police chief says, this isn't right. Let's look into this. Why have they dubbed all this and caused unnecessary deaths following this incident? Where does that buck stop? Someone is responsible for this. Is it someone in CNN, or do they take orders from above, someone higher, which I believe is the case? Because there is no excuse. If he uses or she uses the excuse because of the foul language, the cussing, then yes, they can edit out the cussing, but not the commands from the police to drop the gun. People have died because of it.
Right.
It's terrible.
Well, certainly because of the meme that it sets up, which is that all police officers are just out there hunting black people, which is not what's going on. And, of course, we have to say this, even though it's brainless that we should have to say it, because it's absolutely true. There are some racist cops, but for the most part they're not. They're just out there trying to do a job. And CNN are not the only ones putting out their own brand of fake news. They're joined by Fox. I'm going to play a clip from July the 8th, 2016, by Landon Heath of WFAA-TV, Channel 8 in Dallas.
We told you earlier, before we went to actually this news conference, we just showed you that there was some kind of situation going on near a 7-Eleven downtown Dallas area, in fact, on Ross Street. Our Jobin Paniker is there right now, where a number of police officers had gathered, also a crowd, and it looked like there was some kind of a standoff going on. Jobin?
Well, John, yeah, I guess this is the result when you push people further and further away as the officers create their perimeter, as they push people away. A lot of people have congregated here just outside this 7-Eleven. We're on San Jacinto and Griffin, and this 7-Eleven they shut down about an hour ago because there were just so many people here. We had a chance to talk with someone who came in to actually get some water. Buy some water, and they said people were just coming in and just taking alcohol out of the fridges out of the fridge in the area, and also just taking anything they can. You can see a lot of the trash on the ground. This is all stuff. I can't tell you that all this is stuff that's been looted, but for what we've been told is at least some of the items that you've seen here are things that people have stolen from here. You can see the wall of officers that are sort of protecting at least the establishment, as well as, the reason we got to this location so late was because our vehicles were parked in this parking lot, and we had a very hard time getting our vehicles out because there were so many people surrounding it, and also people putting their beer bottles and pouring their beer and alcohol all over our vehicles. So we had to remove our vehicles safely with all these people around. I would say there are about 300 to 400 people in this area. We're being told that there are buses on the way here to pick up some of these people. We do not know for what purpose. We do not know if they've come here, if DPD has called the buses out here to pick up these people. But at this point, what we're noticing is a lot of people here taunting officers. We're noticing people that are clearly intoxicated, people who are clearly mad. And not a very good mix right now just outside this 7-Eleven. Again, it is closed. It's closed early. The owner asked DPD to shut down because people were coming in to steal items from that store.
Now, while the Dallas Black Lives protests were going on all night long, when 5 Dallas police officers were killed, Fox News kept saying about every 30 seconds, and I watched this coverage all night long, Jan, that the protests were peaceful, the protests were peaceful, the protests were peaceful. Not one single reference to this convenience store looting, not one single reference to the fact that police officers were taunted during this looting, only from Fox that this was a peaceful protest. Again, about every 30 seconds, peaceful this, peaceful that, peaceful the other thing. And I'm positive that this went on with the other news channels such as CNN and MSNBC. Now, I have a personal connection with this, people, because I used to work in that area. I walked the streets that you saw if you looked at the coverage of this terrorist attack in Dallas in July. So I know that area. I even know where El Centro College is, where one of the terrorists holed up so that he could use it for a sniper position. So this is very personal to me. But even Fox News went on the fake news that this was a quote-unquote peaceful protest. And I have Jan with me here because she is so familiar with news outlets from around the planet. She knows the real ones and she knows the fake ones. And Jan, if you'd like to give me a final word about this.
The sadness of all this fake news, and especially this one about the incident with what we've been talking about, the looting and the killings. The sad thing is when CNN edited that video, they knew that people would die because of it. They knew it would incite violence. Why would they want to have an incident like that to take place, and not just one incident, several? You know how long it went on through the nights, the police having to be around in areas, the shootings in the streets, the craziness of it all. But they knew that that would be the reaction. Had they played the truthful video, the actual facts of the video, maybe it wouldn't have occurred. Yeah, you're still going to get the odd one that just wants, that's hell-bent on causing violence and death. But it wouldn't have been so severe. They should not edit facts. They should not destroy facts. And they certainly shouldn't tell little stories and put arms on and legs on things that haven't happened. It's shocking.
Well, Jan,
we're saying here, hell will mend them.
Well, exactly. And Jan, I want to thank you for being on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. You're a great patriot, and you're also someone who keeps their finger on the pulse of news, and I appreciate you very much. People, fake news has become whatever news does not validate the viewer, as in Ms. Wasner's case. Breitbart.com does not validate everything that she's been taught, so it's fake news to her. This is very dangerous, because if we as a people allow ourselves to be programmed by only a few state-sponsored news sources, then that will basically turn us into robots and enemies against ourselves. As a people, we should unite and demand that all news sources produce the truth, and let us decide. And we should be smart news consumers. And if old media, like MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, and the BBC and NPR, are not prepared to tell us the truth, then the people should move to the new mainstream media. High Plains Pundit Media, SHR Media, Global Patriot Radio, RFB Radio, because there are people who, if they have a bias, will say it openly, and then they will research and bring you the truth as best they can. And that includes the Unpleasant Blind Guy. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I'll never make a mistake, but if I do, I'll come back and correct it. And one of the things that I will always do on this program is my level best to bring you the truth as I find it. And that's it for this time. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for listening, and may your God go with you. Goodbye. The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2017. Anno Domini.